Good afternoon, and I would like to welcome you all to the session number 7, which will focus on case studies and researches on peace education, and that will bring us some experience from different parts of the world. I would like to thank Dr. Aslan and his team for organizing such important and virtual conference that brings all these experiences from all over the world. Without further ado, there's slight change in the presentations and the presenters. So we'll have first Professor Dr. Molla Yildiz from Turkey. She will speak to us about refugees in the Turkish schools and peace education. Then hopefully after that, we will continue with Lim from South Africa and Kamar from Austria. And without any further ado, also to save time, of course, we have 3 presenters. So we'll have plenty of time for discussion and comment, which I would like to invite you to engage. And I welcome Professor Dr. Molla Yildiz to talk to us and present to us the issues related to refugees in the Turkish schools and peace education. Please, Professor Molla, the floor is yours. Professor Molla, are you there? Do you hear us?
Yeah. Hello.
Yes.
My name is Molla Yildiz, and do you see me or presentation?
We see you half of your face. If you adjust the camera so we can see the full. Okay, now. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, I will try to correct this face. Yes, it is me. Yes, I am here.
I'm still hearing some voices and some talks. Is that natural, or is it something wrong with the recording?
And that is the voice, even though I want to start with my presentation. And welcome everybody to my presentation. And it is for adaptation.
I'm sorry for the technician. There's an echoes that comes back to us, and that's does not make the voice of our colleague Molla clear.
Yes, okay. It's okay. And my presentation subject is on Syrian students' adaptation problem in Turkish schools. It is so big problem because, and for the technician, there's an echo that comes back to us and does not make the voice of our colleague Molla clear. Yeah. And I want to mention something about the Syrian people and Turkish people relationship. And 29 during the Arab Spring, it caused big problems.
Well, one problem, perhaps you have second laptop or something, or a mobile phone. You have.
I have a mobile phone.
You can stop it, please.
Yes.
Yes, it's much better, but I think you have 2 advices there. Laptop or something, or a mobile phone. You can stop it, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Much better, Okay. Devices there.
Yes, I heard it.
Okay, start again. Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah. And yes, I mentioned something. The relationship between two countries, Syria and Turkey. And a lot of people, more than 4 million refugees.
Okay, start again. Okay.
Yeah. And nearly 4 million refugees live in Turkey. And there was some problem with the relationship because, and all times, we have some problem with about the border, Syria and Turkey, because of the city Hatay. And there was some prejudice about this Syrian people or for Syrian people, for Turkish people. But even though Turkey accepted a lot of refugees, and now we try to overcome some problem about the prejudice. And there are a lot of victims of war in Turkey. And first years, people thought they are so good people, but they are victim of crime and victim of war. Then something changed because they were living in refugee camps, but they started to live around and they went to different cities and they lived with together, Turkish people and Syrian people. Of course, Turkish schools accepted a lot of Syrian children, and it caused some problem for Turkish students, for Syrian students, and depend on general understanding and prejudice. And some Turkish students explained they are so aggressive, and some Syrian children say they are so rude and they refuse to contact with them. Of course, it is a big problem because nearly half of Syrian children and they need education. And of course, Turkish government protect them to be lost generation. And they created some system, some books, some new documentary, and all of so good. But even though apply this documentary or educational system is so hard for teachers because classmates refuse Syrian children, and they, of course, it can be some problem be about this cultural differences or other things, but the most important problem is language barrier. And it is so hard to contact with them. It is so hard to understand what they need, what they want, what they expect from us. And for overcome this problem, Turkish MONE, Minister of Education, created some new solution like after school services, after school language education, or another thing. And then some students started to adopt this Turkish schools. They started to understanding lesson, mathematics, or Turkish language, or science, or another thing. But it is the main problem, language or culture or another thing. It is the main problem is prejudice against Syrian people. It is overcome this problem so hard. And because some parents explain, hesitate about the Syrian children, they can be infected virus, they can be bad intention, they can be another thing. And in Turkey, the Syrian people, a part of the political bias, it caused many, many problems. And all children heard something about the Syrian people in their at home. And of course, they reflect their behavior against Syrian classmates. This overcome this problem was so hard for students, for school managers, for school psychologists, and for everybody. And main problem this adoption is we don't know their degree in Syria in how can we adopt this new degree and new student. And because of this, Turkish money created YOBIS, Foreign Students Information System. It was so useful, but even though big problem, Syrian students refused to come to Turkish schools because that experience caused some psychological problem and depression or another thing. And Turkish teachers heard young boys working for family needs, and they want to explain they should come to school. They can't work for family needs, and they are so young to work, and they are not workers. But even though families in need, and they push the boys to work outside of the school, it is a big problem. And because prejudice and language barrier or another thing pushed young boys to out of the school, and bad fate and bad fortune. And there are a lot of prejudice against Syrian students and Turkish students, even though someone tried to overcome this problem. And how can contact with them? How can we explain our culture to them? Because they use very easily shouting, yelling, and punching. And school was so important for Turkish students. They explain, if you want something, you need to permission, and you can't shout another classmate, you can punch another one, but it was so hard to explain them. And then school psychologists focused this problem, and they did a lot of different research, and then Yildiz made a meta-synthesis about what is the problem, what is the result of the problem, what is their solution offer. And then we saw this picture, and main problem, language problem, and others, those problems, social barrier, and attitudes of parents, and absenteeism, and registration, another problem. But it caused, all of caused, academical failure, and they have good grade from the school. And it is main problem is language, but result is language, academic failure. And of course, all of this related each other. But, and we need to find a good solution to overcome prejudice, language barrier, and academic failure. Because after the 10 years, they will be living in Turkey, and we need to solve this problem now. 10 years or 20 years, so hard to, nearly impossible to help them to solve this problem. It will cause another ghettos and another criminal problem, another district problem, another social problem. And because of this, I try to explain some solution, and we can add some new chapters, religious lesson book. And because nearly a lot of prophets have experience about to be refugee, and Prophet Muhammad, Prophet Musa, and other prophets exile their homeland, and they experience to leave another country to live. And of course, our Prophet Muhammad, so important figure, role model in Turkey, and for Turkish people and for Syrian people. And we can explain this. And if allowed in Turkey now, Prophet Muhammad, what will be?
Hello? I'm sorry. I think there's echoes and sounds behind your speech. We cannot hear you very well. So anybody from the technician, experts can fix the voice, because there's double voices coming to us, and we cannot hear Professor Dr. Molla very well. I appreciate if somebody attend to this problem.
Yes, it is the last slide I want to
Okay. Molla, I think you have two advices there. You can stop one of them or the two of them. I don't know. You have perhaps your Do you know you have laptop and mobile same time? But show your last slide. We can talk perhaps
Yes,
later.
it is
Okay.
the last slide.
Okay.
Researchers.
I think you have two advices there. You can stop one of them or the two of them. I don't know. You have perhaps, you have laptop and mobile same time.
Yes, I have mobile.
Show your last slide. We can talk perhaps.
Yes, it is the last slide. I will stop. Thank you. Religion is so important for we can stop this prejudice and punching each other. And thank you so much for your patience. Good day.
Thank you, Mullah. Unfortunately, the voice was not clear. I hope the other people were able to understand what you were saying, which is very important. So before we move to the next speakers, would it be possible that the voices and the echoes will disappear, so we'll have clear voices? Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Doctor. And now we would like to listen to Hyunji Lim from South Korea. She graduated from Teacher Colleges, Columbia University, with a master's degree in international education development. Her research focused on mindfulness, spirituality, and identity in the contemporary South African society. Also, she holds a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of Southern California and work at Liberty in North Korea. And she can send her link, which is a non-profit organization with an objective to rescue North Korean defectors between the border of China and North Korea. At the link, she initiated education program and resettlements toolkits for North Korean youth in South Korea. Her mission is to help those who are powerless to defend against human rights violation and to provide voices for those who are suffering from a lost sense of belonging and love. I think her presentation is very good because she shed so much light on how the defectors from North Korea as a totalitarian society to become a resident or a citizen in South Korea where the life condition is different. So Mr. Hyunji Lim, if I pronounce that, please, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for your introduction. Can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, then let me share the screen really quick. Do you see the PowerPoint slide, everyone?
Yes, it's fine, clear. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so let me start. Hi, my name is Hyunji. Thank you for a beautiful introduction. Right now I'm in South Korea. I'll be presenting my research titled Filial Piety as Peace Education, a case study of Buddhist resettlement program for North Korean defectors in South Korea. As you can tell from the title, this study is about how Buddhism helped North Korean defectors resettle in South Korea and how that is aligned to the purpose of peace education. And out of many values that Buddhism teaches, I focus on filial piety today, and I'll be presenting what that is and how that's connected to peace education. So let's get started. Before jumping into the study, I would like to give you guys a brief introduction about the study. So first of all, many North Korean defectors escape from the border of North Korea and China every year, and they come to South Korea. There's about approximately 300 people coming to the country. And the majority of them experience many difficulties, many social emotional pains such as homesickness, loneliness, post-traumatic disorder, or even social segregation between South Koreans and North Koreans. So this is a really big issue in the Korean peninsula. North Koreans and South Koreans, there is a tension, there is a segregation, and a lot of North Koreans suffer from that pain. In order to alleviate North Korean defectors' social emotional pain, I believe that Buddhism can play a significant role in order to heal their minds and in order to find inner peace. And I thought out of many Buddhist teachings, filial piety can play a very important role as a form of peace education. So I have 3 research questions for this study. And the first one is, as presented in this slide, how does Buddhist organization teach filial piety as a form of peace education to North Korean defectors? Number 2, how do North Korean defectors perceive filial piety as a motivation of their resettlement? And the last research question is how and in what ways filial piety is connected to the principles of peace education. So these are my research questions. And let me give you a quick background about my study. There are 3 keywords I would like to present. Peace education, of course, it's an important keyword for this study. As you all know, it's a pedagogy, movement, and theory that fosters the culture of peace and nonviolence to prevent conflict and help learners build resilience. Buddhism is a religion, a belief, philosophy, and spiritual practice that's based on Buddha's teachings. Now, finally, filial piety. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys must be wondering what filial piety is. It's a virtue of respecting one's parents, elders, and ancestors. So basically, it's respecting your parents, understanding your parents' love. You always remind yourself that your parents sacrifice a lot for you, so you try to behave nice and respect them. Although it stems from Confucianism and Buddhism, and it's one of the most important values in Korea, it's not only an Asian value. I believe it's a universal thing. You know, you behave well to your parents, you want to respect them, you understand their love and sacrifice. So that global term of filial piety is the key term of this study. So this section is literature review. I did an extensive research on how other literatures and how other scholars studied how filial piety impacted other people's lives. Theoretical framework I use for this study is self-determination theory. It's a theory saying that people's choices are connected to intrinsic motivation without external interference, meaning that if you have higher self-determination, that leads to a higher motivation, and that generates a high life satisfaction. I believe that theoretical framework is connected to filial piety, because if you tend to have a higher sense of filial piety, you have a higher sense of autonomy and independence, which means that you have a higher life satisfaction. So this study has been supported by Page and Sons research titled Relations Between Dual Filial Piety and Life Satisfaction. In her study, it's been beautifully presented that she studied 300 Chinese students, and she observed how students who had higher sense of filial piety, they want to satisfy their parents' expectation. They want to make their family happy. And also they want to make their lives to be happy as well. And they want to feel confident about their life choices as well. So if you have a higher sense of filial piety, you become more independent and you become a more autonomous person. So I found that research aligns a lot with my research I did with North Korean defectors. And surprisingly, I found out that filial piety is valued in many cultures, in diverse cultural groups, such as Israel, China, Australia, New Zealand, United States, and many other Western countries. So it was good to see how filial piety is valued in many other countries, and that was the key term of literature review. So based on that studies and theoretical framework, I studied how would they impact in my own country? How would North Korean defectors shape their lives after learning religious teachings? So before jumping onto that, let me give you a brief background about Buddhist resettlement program. First of all, if North Korean defectors escape the country, North Korea, obviously, and then if they come to South Korea, they are required to enroll in this public institution. So what they do is that they are required to go through this 3 months mandatory resettlement education training program. So throughout this dormitory life, they live in a dorm for 3 months. They learn everything about how to survive in South Korea. So they learn Korean history, Korean literature, Korean culture, South Korean dialects. They learn how to use internet. They learn how to open a bank account, how to use public transportation, how to find a job, how to look for schools and stuff. So this 3 months mandatory resettlement education program is like a resettlement survival package for North Korean defectors. And surprisingly, it's very interesting to see every Sundays, these North Korean defectors are able to participate in religious activities. So they get to choose either participate in Catholic groups or Christian groups or Buddhist groups. And I chose Buddhist groups for this study. Why? Because I'm Buddhist. I grew up in a Buddhist family, and the majority, more than 90% of the current literature studies about Christian groups. So Catholic groups and Christian groups, they've been doing a lot of job in missionary support and refugee relief for North Korean defectors, but there's a very small study done that is outside of Christianity. So I was like, why don't I just take a chance? And I really want to dig into this program. So that's how I found out the public institution. I will not say the name of it because of the security reason. So I will just say out as a public institution. So after these North Korean defectors graduate from public institution, now they're free to go. They can go out to South Korea. They can do whatever they want, basically. And throughout the country, there are many Buddhist temples, and these independent temples also run Buddhist resettlement programs, not only for North Korean defectors, but also other emotionally healing kind of workshops, such as mindfulness and stuff. They teach those stuff for marginalized groups. So these North Korean defectors choose to continue participating in these temples, even after graduating from public institutions. So with the collaboration of these two research sites, the public institution and independent temples, I did research on how they teach filial piety and many Buddhist values to these refugee vulnerable population. They use a variety of materials, but I focused on this one material called Filial Piety Sutra. It's an ancient Buddhist script talking about filial piety, of course, and they talk about how you can behave well and how can repay your love towards your family and your parents. So it's kind of like an ancient kind of etiquette book, and North Korean defectors learned this, and South Korean monks have been passionately teaching this. Aside from traditional kind of classroom one-way teacher to student format, also these programs run fun activities for North Korean defectors to help them stay engaged in the community and feel more motivated to South Korea and all these Buddhist terms, because of course, filial piety, Buddhism, religion, democracy, everything is so new to these people for North Korean defectors. So how these monks and program facilitators crafted this program is they joined class materials, but also fun activities. So the example is community service, meditation, Buddhist art sessions. They also have cooking classes. They sing together. They do tea ceremony every month. They also do many other emotional healing workshops. And that was a very interesting curriculum that I looked into. So I hope every one of you guys understand what program that is now. methodology part. So I did qualitative methods for this research. I did semi-structured in-depth interviews with 2 South Korean monks and 3 South Korean program facilitators. And secondly, I did survey questionnaires with 20 North Korean defectors. Now, the reason why I did surveys for North Korean defectors, I'm sure you guys noticed that I have 2 different methodologies. It's because of security reasons. North Korean defectors are at high risk of exposing their profile to the public. They feel extremely insecure. They feel very anxious about the fact that they escaped North Korea. And once it's out in the public, they feel scared because they have families back in North Korea and they don't want to get exposed, especially to strangers. I was strangers for them. So in order to disconnect the data and their profile, I did survey for them. It was very successful. So the North Korean defectors felt really, really comfortable filling out their surveys rather than one-on-one interviews. And the return rate was 100%. I was able to get all the data sent back from the 20 North Korean defectors. On the other hand, I did very in-depth interviews with the monks and South Korean program facilitators for the whole year. I did monthly follow-ups and stuff, so that was very successful as well. Lastly, I did participant observation. I was able to actually get into the public institution. I visited all the temples and I participated in those Buddhist programs. And then I watched how the monks, the program facilitators, and how the North Korean defectors interact to each other, how they teach Buddhism, and how North Korean defectors perceive Buddhism. So that was a very effective methodology for this study. So what did I find out in this study? I have 3 big takeaways for this study. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, filial piety was taught in a variety of project-based pedagogy, meaning that filial piety in these programs were not taught in a one-way kind of traditional teacher to student kind of method. Like, this is filial piety, you guys need to memorize. That was not the case. It was more like a fun and engaging project-based pedagogy. And this was very effective for, especially for North Korean defectors, because they were able to naturally absorb the Buddhist terms, filial piety, even democracy, and all the new terms and ideologies, and adapt those values into their lives by doing fun activities like community service or tea ceremony, meditation, group meditation together. And so this project-based pedagogy was very successful. And I believe that this pedagogy would be very effective outside of North Korean defector communities and refugee communities in other countries. And that was the first takeaway. And secondly, North Korean defectors were able to utilize their filial minds as a source of building autonomous life. So this means that when I visited the temples and carrying out my study, I realized that many North Korean defectors were suffering from homesickness and deep sense of guilt, because a lot of them left their parents behind in the country, or even they lost their family during their escape journey, which is very tragic. And even if they come to South Korea and become successful, they're not happy. And they blame themselves, and they keep saying, oh, why did I come here? I miss my parents. I'm such a bad daughter, or I'm such a bad son. I feel really bad. And then these North Korean defectors suffer from that deep sense of guilt throughout their whole time in South Korea, which hinders so much them from building a new life and successfully adjusting in South Korea. So this is when religious groups step in. This is when Buddhism comes in and monks say, hey, you guys, I understand it's devastating. I understand it's heartbreaking, but you guys need to be more independent, happy about your life, build a new life, become more successful at your new place. And that's the true way of practicing filial piety, rather than just missing your parents all day and just sinking in that sadness all day. That doesn't help at all. So the true way of practicing filial piety is living your own life, become more independent, lead your own life, start a new chapter. That's the true way of practicing filial piety, and that's probably what your parents want you to do. So these kind of messages are so, it's kind of a wake-up call for them. So North Korean defectors feel so comfortable, like these words were comforting for them. And I found that the Buddhist teachings of filial piety aligns a lot with the purpose of peace education, because in the end, it's about finding peace, and you need to overcome your own obstacles deep inside you. So I found that aligns with filial peace education. That connects to learning about the principles of filial piety console the North Korean defectors' melancholy minds of missing their parents, yes, and also North Korean defectors were able to learn the root cause of their conflicts and find inner peace through learning filial piety. So when I met North Korean defectors and also did interviews with South Korean monks, I learned that these North Korean defectors have that deep inner conflicts deep inside them. For instance, female defectors, they were victims of rape, sex trafficking, sex crime, and for instance, children, they saw their parents get shot by Chinese police officers right in front of them, or like the North Korean soldiers, they caught their parents and took them back to their prison camp. So these children become orphans instantly, and they came back to South Korea. So even though they successfully escaped the country and came to South Korea, still they always suffer from their inner conflicts, and they don't know how to handle those conflicts. So majority of them become extremely angry against to themselves or their new lives, or become pessimistic, extremely depressed. So by learning filial piety, not only filial piety, but Buddhism in general, they have many social emotional healing components like mindfulness, meditation, inner peace, and so forth. By learning these religious values, these defectors were able to learn how to deal with their inner conflicts. And that also aligns with the purpose of peace education, because peace education not only teaches how to handle your outer conflicts, but also it's a way of learning how to be resilient and deal with your inner conflicts as well, especially right now, like COVID-19 pandemic. I think that's really important for everyone, for us to learn how to be resilient at your place and find inner peace and deal with your inner conflicts. So I thought that is a really big takeaway I learned from this study. So this is going to be my last session. I would like to briefly discuss about this study and talk about limitations and wrap up this presentation. So filial piety can be a promising tool for peace education in terms of family bonding, inner peace, conflict resolution, and many other social-emotional healing pedagogy. When I was studying peace education, I realized that the majority of them are coming from the Western school of thoughts, which is true, it's from the Western thinking, philosophy, but I believe that there are many common peace education kind of elements in the East side too. So I think this study can be a great place to discuss, bringing all the discussions from both from the West and the East side, the Asian side, so we can have a more open-minded and global discussion from all around the world, talking about peace education. So I hope everyone can also learn about Asian values of peace education. I am very proud of my study. I'm very happy about it, but of course it's not perfect all the time. There is always a limitation. 20 North Korean defectors may not represent the whole population. Yes, it is true. However, the research has a high value on rare data collected from North Koreans. So as a scholar, it was really hard. It was a big challenge to have an access to North Korean defectors, because they are in a very special position. They're out of many marginalized groups and vulnerable groups. Technically, Korea is still in a war, so it's really hard to have access to them. So in order to protect their confidentiality, it was inevitable for me to knock the door every time, hey, can I do research and stuff? So it was a big challenge. And that's why there's a very small study done about the lives of North Korean defectors. So I would propose that in the future, bigger sample size would be better. However, this study might shed lights on the understudied area of Korean studies, religion, but even peace education. So 20 is not bad, I think. So yeah, that was my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you guys can have a very peaceful day. I would like to wrap it up with my favorite quote from Buddha: "Peace comes from within, do not seek it without." Thank you.
Thank you, Lim, for a very clear presentation. And I really admire how passionate and clear that you present your papers, and shows so much devotion and passionate because of you are Buddhist yourself. Maybe that's one thing. Other thing also, it's the subject that you deal with, and with the political sensitivity and serious, not safe area. I think your research still will be a limestone and starting up for further research, and there's no research is complete anyway. So thank you very much. I'm sure there will be some question, but we will wait until we invite the third presenters, who will be Kamar Jafri. I don't know if I pronounce his name is right. I hope, I apologize if it's not right. Mr. Kamar Jafri is a doctoral researcher in peace building in the School of Global, Urban and Social Studies at RIMIT, University of Australia. His research interests include religion, race, ethnicity, non-violence, human rights, and peace education. So welcome to the round, Mr. Kamar. He is a country resource person, Pakistan, on mapping peace education, which is very important, at the Global Campaign for Peace Education, partnered with the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. His recent authorship includes a journal article in Dynamics of Asymmetric Conflict, a policy brief for Toda Peace Institute, Japan, and case study on inclusive peace and interfaith dialogue. Also, his insights are frequently featured in global peace reports. And he's and a special report of nonviolence funded by International Center on Nonviolence. Mr. Jafri, I invite you to share your experience with us in relation to your work of the analysis of textbooks, Islam and peace educating being taught in madrasas of Pakistan. So originally you're Pakistanis, but I think you're stationed in Australia. So without further ado, please start.
Hello everyone, I am Kamar Jafri. I hope all of you are in good health and you're all safe. My presentation is related to the Islam and peace education in Pakistan. This presentation is based on my PhD fieldwork, my PhD research that I conducted during 2018-19, and still it is in process. So in this presentation, I proposed the analysis of textbook that is Islam and Peace Education. This textbook, the analysis of this textbook is based on my in fieldwork interviews and textbook analysis and translation of the textbook context, because that textbook is in Urdu, and the plus the other reports. So I will go into the context of this presentation. After 9/11 attacks in US and Pakistan's collaboration with the USA in war on Afghanistan, focus was shifted towards Islamic seminaries or madrasas in Pakistan. The scholars, civil society, and the peace actors thought that madrasa students in Pakistan are being radicalized for violence and violent extremism, in terrorism and political violence. So in that context, the focus shifted to madrasa curricula and madrasa pedagogy to prevent the radicalization of madrasa students in Pakistan. Peace and Education Foundation is a non-profit organization in Islamabad, and it it created the idea to introduce the Islamic concepts of peace in Pakistan. So it collaborated with the Ittihad-e-Tanzim Madaris Pakistan, that is the coalition or the conglomeration of madrasas in Pakistan. Those madrasas are all sects of Muslim sects, that they are the Brelvi sect, Deobandi, Salfi, and Shia. So basic target of the book was to reduce the exclusive identity formation in sectarian identity formation in among Muslims, plus to introduce the peace education in madrasa students towards other religious minorities inside Pakistan. So in that context, Peace and Education Foundation first published in 2014 Islam and Peace Education. And the working strategy of the PEF is to train the master trainers. It takes teachers and madrasa students from different madrasas and train in the contents of this book and in the peace education. And those master trainers went back to their madrasas. They work in two ways. They teach their students in madrasas, plus they train the other students, other teachers of madrasas. So I will evaluate the concepts which are given, which are imparted to these master trainers. Then they are shifted towards madrasa students. The very first concept that emerged from this book is this book promotes the diversity in Pakistan. Pakistan has a very diverse society. There are different ethnic, lingual, different religious groups. There are different sectarian within Muslims, sectarian groups. There are different even races. So that diversity has problem, because the states issue with the political Islam, states issues with the Islamization or Islamic identity formations, states struggles with the creation of unity or nationalism among all these identities that led to the intolerance towards different ethnic, lingual, religious, and sectarian groups inside Pakistan. So, to address this issue, this peace and education book introduces the concept of diversity by taking the contents from Quran. And for example, on page 9 of the textbook, it gives interprets the Quranic verse like diversity of languages and colors. So it is interpreted that Quran encourages Quran sports. It means Islam sports the diversity of different lingual, different religious, different sectarian existence in a society, within a country, within a same community. So that concept is related to diversity promotion in Pakistan. So within sectarian concept, another verse of the Quran is related on one page 123 explains that so do not do not be divided. So it is referred to the Muslims. Its interpretation is related to the Muslims sects, that Muslims should firmly hold the beliefs, basic beliefs of Islam, that is Allah or God, prophethood, and Quran and Hadith. So these are the basic principles of Islam that should all Muslims believe on this, and they should not be divided. So sectarian, to address the sectarian differences inside Pakistan. The next, this book addresses the issue, gives critical thinking to madrasa teachers. For example, it gives training to imams, different mosques and imams. It gives training in pedagogy, in teaching methods, in psychological concepts, and social sciences conflicts. So from pedagogy, social sciences, educational concepts, they learn about how to argue, how to debate, how to discuss the religious, sectarian, or their issues with critical analysis, with analytical approach, with reasons, with logic. Other way of promoting critical thinking in madrasa students and teachers is teacher guide. This teacher guide is based on the teachings of this Peace and Education book. So from taking concept from Peace and Education book, teacher guide is prepared, and those madrasa teachers use in the madrasa this teacher guide. And another way of promoting critical thinking is to expose the madrasa teachers with university education, with university teachers. University teachers or professors are hired, and they have 8 weeks course on university madrasa certificate program. So university teachers expose the madrasa teachers with the concepts of modern education, that is how to educate the children, how to promote diversity, how to promote critical thinking, how to make the students able to adjust in the modern education. The other way is interfaith dialogue. Different religious minorities, different sectarian groups of Pakistan, they are connected through a dialogue. Through this dialogue, mainly they are the imams, they are madrasa teachers, and through this dialogue, they also learn the contents of this book. So these are all things are based on the contents of this textbook. For example, on page 9 of the textbook, it is mentioned that do not harm people unknowingly, means do not do not harm, do not be dangerous to the people without knowing the reasons, without knowing the logic, without knowing, without thinking critically about the issue. So this particular issue is relevant to the radicalization of young people, because mostly for jihad or for violence, political violence, they are radicalized, and they are driven because they don't know much about the concepts of jihad, much about the concepts of where to start jihad, who has the authority to give the order of jihad. So like these are the concept critical thinking. So this book gives concepts of understanding the causes of conflict, how the conflict between human beings start, what are different reasons, and how to approach those conflicts, and how to resolve those conflicts. Like previous concepts, they give critical thinking. So critical thinking, dialogue, modern education, pedagogy, they are linked with the conflict and the resolution of conflict. So through dialogue, through critical thinking, through logical reasoning, the conflict can be resolved. and conflict should be managed. Conflict should not be escalated. This education, particularly this book, focuses on this. Like in this Quranic verses is interpreted that fight against the transgressors means justice. Do justice, do fairness, and do not be unfair with anyone, with any human being. This is not limited to only Muslims, to any human beings. So this interpretation gives also is linked with the within Muslims, then like the concept of brotherhood, that make peace between your brothers within sects like Deobandi, Barelvi, Shia, Sunni, uh, Salafi. Make peace with your brothers. So this concept is addresses the uh, sectarian issues. The above concept addresses the aims to expose them towards religious minorities, that behave treat them with fairness, with justice. The next concept is religious freedom. This book also takes the concept from Quranic verse and tells that destroying the churches or attacking the churches, synagogues, monasteries, or any other religious worship places of religious minorities in Pakistan uh, is forbidden in Quran. Allah, God forbids this. Allah doesn't allow this, because uh, there is also worship of gods, and there can be a worship of Allah. So that is the religious freedom that promotes the religious freedom among religious class, madrasa students, madrasa teachers, about Christians, Hindus, Sikh, and other religious minorities existing inside Pakistan. This other than the religious freedom, the textbook imparts knowledge in non-violent communications. With reference to communications, mostly the madrasa students or madrasa teachers, they have rote learning system. And in rote learning system, they lack critical thinking. They lack critical thinking, where they cannot argue, where they cannot give the reason or logic. They resort to violent or hate speech, or violent, mostly violent kind of language, or even they become the part of militants or terrorist groups. So this book gives them the concepts of non-violent communications, like how to speak with respect, how to tolerate different opinions, different point of view, and how to understand each other mutual values, like the other religious or sectarian values, other people's thinking, worldviews, and their own thinkings. Then they can tolerate, they should tolerate, they should speak with tolerance, they should speak with respect, and listen to them, and then tell their point of view. Like and they took from Surah verse Al-Baqarah, speak kindly to people, mean with politeness, with good manner, in good manners to the people. So do not insult the others. Like uh, if you will insult the other people, or the other groups, your perceived enemy or opponents, then of course they will give you the same. They will resort to same. So this non-violent communication also this book teaches. What is the impact of this book so far? Since 2014, this Peace and Education Foundation has established 5 different centers. Those different centers are different, the Deobandi, Brelvi, Salfi, and Shia, and sects. So by targeting all these sects, 5 centers has been established, and 478 teachers, madrasa teachers have been trained so far. So those trained teachers have further approached or further impacted madrasa teachers and students, and that has reached more than 50,000 students and madrasa teachers, and in all sects of Muslims. As far as the publication and distribution of this book is concerned, around 3,500 Barelvi, in different Barelvi madrasas, book has been distributed. Around 3,500 in Deobandi madrasas, this book has been distributed, and 2,000 books are distributed in Shia madrasas, and 2,500 in Salfi madrasas, and 1,000 copies of this book are translated into Pashto language, because in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of Pakistan, and mostly in madrasas or Islamic schools, the teachers and students speak Pashto language, local language, their native language. So they requested that the book should be given them into Pashto language. 1,000 copies of this book has been translated by International Research Council on Religious Affairs to deliver those northwestern region. In conclusion, I will conclude this presentation that if young people, especially the religious madrasa students, madrasa teachers, are exposed or made awareness about the concepts of other groups or perceived opponents, and their knowledge and awareness about other groups is increased in light of Islamic teachings, in light of Quranic verses, and they are interpreted in context of conflict in a particular situation like that of Pakistan. There could be a reduction in prejudice, discrimination, and hostile feelings between them. So this prejudice or this discrimination can develop empathy, and the main issue that is perceived threats between them, that if one contacts with the other sect or other religion, they will lose their own faith. That is the main feelings, perception, that they will lose their own. So that this contact will increase their empathy, their knowledge, and their anxiety or their anxiousness of losing the faith or symbolic identity, sectarian identity or religious identity. This will be minimized, and this can be inclusive learning. This inclusive learning can be a good way to reduce prejudice and to prevent them from radicalization, from being violent or being extremist. That is the main issue that comes from the exclusive sectarian or exclusive teachings that is common in Pakistan and madrasas, different madrasas. For further sources, the Peace and Education website can be consulted. For I have also published on this particular case study on this, and for Peace Direct, that is also useful to know about further if someone interested in this. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening for my presentation, because there was some issue. My little kid is standing outside the room and he is knocking this, come out, come out. So that was my panicking me. I am sorry for that. So my PhD, my kids, all these things are mixed.
Thank you, Kamar. I think we enjoyed listening to the voices of your child and trying also to interfere and also to engage. Maybe he or she wants to engage in the discussions. That's also maybe that's how the continuation of the idea of peace education is important. And thank you for your deep analysis of how this book has been used and the large perspective of this book is being used. And I apologize if I pronounce the name differently or I made mistake in the phonetical, announcing the names. I think Mualla is Mualla, I think, I assume. So I apologize, Mualla. So without further ado, I appreciate all three speakers and welcome all comments or questions. Maybe I start just to warm up with this about maybe my question to Lim first. How is there a follow-up study? I know you did your study on a 20 North Korean defectors. Is there further study how they really adjusted in the South Korean society? Is there a follow-up? Maybe this has come to the beginning. The other, my other question maybe goes to Kamal also. Is there only one book that's being used in these madrasas, which is big, and huge, really distribution of the book and usable, which is amazing how this book has been used in different schools and also been translated to Pashto, etc. Are there other books or just one? You talk about books, and who authored that book, and is there kind of revision of that book? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your questions. To answer the first one, yes, there is a follow-up study outside in other literatures. It takes time because, as you all know, North Korean defectors are in a very vulnerable position. So even doing follow-ups as a scholar is very challenging, but yes, there is. For my research, I am still following up with the monks and the program facilitators, and with their help, I am continuing carrying out surveys with North Korean defectors. My study is in an initial stage, so the follow-ups will happen later on. But yes, it is in progress, and so yeah, there is a follow-up. And
I'm sorry.
And to answer your second question, there are many books available in the temple and at the public institution. It's really up to them. It depends on the monks and the program facilitators to teach what kind of materials they want to use. There are many Buddhist scripts, but the reason why I chose one book for this program is because I want to focus on filial piety, because they teach so many stuff. There are so many values and terms they teach about Buddhism, like the big buzzword right now, everyone knows about mindfulness or inner peace or many other Korean terms as well. But I want to study more and more of like a family's perspective, family bonding, and that kind of upbringings and how that impact North Korean defectors. So, and also according to the survey, North Korean defectors, out of many books, North Korean defectors really loved that book the most, because I watched them literally reading that book and cry at the program because they were thinking about their parents and family. So I was like, wow, okay, I should focus on this material. So going back to your question, there are many books, yes. For instance, a public institution, I remember there were about 3 books per term, but I chose filial piety for this program. And many other independent temples, they use other Buddhist scripts as well. It's very flexible, so it depends on the monks. But for this study, I chose filial piety.
Kamar, would you like to respond?
Yes. Your question is, this book has been authored because Peace and Education Foundation collaborated with the Ittihad-e-Tanzimat-e Madaris Pakistan, that is 5 sects Madaris coalition. So from they consulted the leaders of those Madaris, and after consultation from different sects, scholars, Islamic scholars from different sects were selected, almost 1 dozen scholars there. they collectively developed this book because they have collective consensus. They kept in mind the context of conflict in Pakistan, that is ethnic, sectarian, religious. In context of that, so there are around 1 dozen authors, and they belong to different religion, different sectarian within Muslim thoughts. I'm not aware about whether any religious minorities members, but I know about that in different sectarian leaders. They collectively developed this book. Then they collectively launched this book, and there is consensus of our religious leaders in this. So that is one of its kind that Peace and Education Foundation has introduced. If there is some else, but I that is not in my knowledge, or that is not because I collected with more than 1 dozen peace organizations in field work. So that was unique here in this book. I did not get any idea about such kind of books, although they were doing dialogues, trainings, manuals like this one. But this is published, this book, particularly on Islamic concept base. This is one of the unique.
Thank you, Kamar. And I just want to come back to Lim. If you see the photos behind my back, this is my father. Because
Oh,
also as a Muslim in the Middle East, we highly respect parents and grandparents, and also we also cherished our offsprings. My question just to Mualla, I apologize for announcing your name wrongly. How do you see the improvement of engaging the refugees, Syrian refugees, with the problem that you raised into the education system of Turkey toward a peace education, if the term is right? I know you mentioned a few problems, but how you foresee the development of such, engagement of refugees in the Turkish education system? I know that Turkey done so much to the Syrian refugees, so much than any other Arab country or Muslim country.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems, but this core of this problem is cultural barrier and language barrier. Other side, we have a good lesson at the schools, religion and moral lesson, and we can add a new part for explain our prophet was a refugee. And a lot of Turkish workers live in Germany and other countries, in European countries. They face similar problem. How can we overcome this problem? It is not Turkish people problem. It is humankind problem.
Yes.
Every day, someone should go another country. Someone should live another country. Of course, they will face some problem. And a lot of Turkish people live in Germany and they face a lot of cultural barrier, language barrier, and other thing. But this core is religion. And because we are member of the same religion with the Syrian people, it is big advantage for us. And our prophet and a lot of prophet exiled their homeland and they should live in another country, and they lived long years. And because of this, I explain. And if I create a peace culture, if I create it in our lessons, and we can solve this problem, and we can solve the problem with the children, after then it increase all of the country, because their parents so aggressive and they have serious prejudice about the Syrian people. Yeah. We cannot stop because it is a part of political bias. And in this subject, if I start from the children, we can solve very easily, because Syrian children needs help from the peer of Turkish children, and they are good. They can be good friends. They can learn Turkish with together. They can play with together. We can overcome cultural barrier, language barrier, and academical failure. And because of the 10 years can be so late for us, for this country, for Syrian people, and for world peace. Because of this, It is good day to start to create good program, to create peace culture.
Great, that's very nice. With the same token, maybe as you mentioned, that there's prejudice, animosity, suspicions. I don't know what's the term. The issues, how not to generalize the bad act of any refugees and to generalize that to all refugees. That's one thing. And the other thing also, with your program, also try to touch upon also educating Turkish children, Turkish community or family, for those refugees pass through this, and how to create a welcoming, welcoming condition for them. And maybe that's to think about it. I would like to move to questions. Maybe if you like to reflect on this, I appreciate that, Mualla.
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, of course, a lot of problem, and we cannot change parents' thinking style, but religious institution has a lot of advantage to create backgrounds to meet with together. Mosques, very good place to meet with together, to face relationship, to contact. And Turkish religious institution have a lot of opportunity to create some activities, and we can do it together. We can help each other. We can solve this problem. The main problem is they live in one place in a city, and it can get to. It is a big problem. But now we try to contact with them, but they don't want to see me because they don't want to learn Turkish language. Why? Because they hope to see Germany. And yes, big problem in their mind. And we will live in European countries. We don't need to know Turkish language. You need to learn Turkish language because probably you will be stay long years in this country. They don't know. There are a lot of hidden reality, hidden fact, but it's affects seriously. And this point, and peace culture, yes, it is good problem. Yes, it is good point, but we can contact with a little. Ramadan, good way. Jumu'ah praying, good way. Yes. And other praying, good way. And we need elder cooperation and collaboration, and we can overcome this problem. Very good way, religion and spiritual way, and to understand each other. But especially women living at home, they don't want to face to other neighbor or other thing. They don't want to see us because they believe their home safe place for them. But after 10 years, you cannot leave your home only. You should go out. You can know someone. And because of this, yes, there are a lot of problems, but we can create good peace culture using religious steps, after then educational steps, after then sociological steps. Step by step, we can overcome this problem. It is not Turkish people problem. It is humankind problem, and we cannot create a new ghetto in this country. And peace is good thing to understand each other. We don't need to be member of the same religion. Of course, some of them a member of different religious sects. It is not important for us, and because our perspective depends on the secular understanding. And we accept all of people, different ethnic origin and different religion. We can't ask to someone, what is your religion? Because of this, our constitutional law. And but they don't know about anything else. And of course, they have some prejudice and some bad experience. And bad thing is very known, but good thing is not very effective in the society generally. But we can create. But this point, we need the big organization, and we need the important opportunity, and we need to know each other. Then we can overcome this problem. After then, world will be safe place for everybody. But this problem is big problem, and Turkish government should solve this problem to be in safe all of the people.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. I think you need also time. There's a question from Rajab to Lem, if you can explain briefly and in the short term, and what's the filial piety? What is it? And
Okay.
yeah, please. Okay, if you go ahead. And
Mhm.
there's also another question, if you allow me, because that comes in the chat box. Let me just put it. Yes. Oh boy, boy. Oh. Also, there's another question is also to Lim. I find the term filial piety very problematic. Children can be exposed to violence by their parents or close family members. They can be even tortured or raped by them. How should filial piety apply in these circumstances for people who choose Buddhism and visit, okay, I don't, uh, who choose, okay, just one second. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, can you respond to that, please? Buddhism.
Yeah. Um, so these are great questions. So if I answer the first one, filial piety might sound very bizarre and it's hard to understand, but simply just putting this way, if it's a virtue, it's an etiquette, it's a mindset that you respect your parents. So if you always remember, just like you have your families, your parents' picture hung on the wall, that itself can be filial piety. If you always stay mindful and understand their love, you you understand their sacrifice, you try to be nice to them, displaying that etiquette itself can be filial piety as well. So it's a very large umbrella term. There are many ways to practice that. That can be shown as if your parents are old now, if they're sick and you take care of them, that's also a way of practicing filial piety. So just that mindset itself that you love your parents, that can be filial piety. And that comes from Confucianism and also Buddhism. It shapes the foundation of Asian society, especially South Korea. So that filial piety can be very difficult for some people, but just if you put it in a simple way, loving your parents, respecting your parents, just that mindset or etiquette itself, that virtue is filial piety, if I answer that question.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. Yeah,
and
there. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I'll move on to the second question. This is a really great question because I noticed this when I visited the program as well. Filial piety, yes, it can be problematic, especially for victims of domestic violence. But filial piety is not only limited to the parents. It's a very organic term. It can expand to your ancestors. It can expand to just elder people. So it's more of an identity issue. So for those people who have issues with their parents, think about this way. Filial piety taught in these programs is more of an identity. Like for instance, as a Korean, understand that you're Korean, your upbringings, your identity, where it comes from, your attitude, your values. So it's coming from top down. So from this perspective, it really depends on the organic perspective of filial piety. It can be applied to a limited spectrum to parents, but you can expand it. It can be your whole identity or understanding your upbringing issues. So for those who were victims of domestic violence or they have bad relationship with their parents, filial piety can apply it in more of like an understanding their upbringings or identity issue. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to invite Tariq Ijaz, if I pronounce right, to say something about Kamar's book or story. Please, Ijaz, could you please
Yes,
comment?
thank you very much, Sami Adwan Sahib. You have just given me this opportunity to put my comment on the presentation that Kamar Jafri Sahib has just given. Yes, I endorse his point of view and the way he has presented the book has played a very important role in order to bring different sects together and to understand each other. Since I have also been part of a few conferences, seminars arranged by PEF, Peace Education Foundation in Islamabad. And since I work with a university as assistant professor, so a number of times we have been in collaboration with this Peace Education Foundation. And the book which he has highlighted and he analyzed the content of the book, definitely there are 5 different mainstream sects in Pakistan, and their chiefs, the heads of the sects, they all endorsed with their signature in the first or the second page of the book. I mean, it has been unanimously accepted by all sects. So actually, the book itself, the content of the book deals with the method how to behave with each other in case of disagreement, in case you don't agree with you, how, what are the manners and ethics that even living within those parameters, you can have your own disagreement. At the same time, you can extend love and mercy and affection for each other. So the book has definitely contributed tremendously, and number of students belonging to religious seminaries, they have been engaged, the 2 teachers, they have been trained, and I also being one of the trainers, 6 months project, I have been engaged along with other professors. So along with that, I would like to add, because Qamar Jafri Saab, he was saying that I don't know if there is any other effort going on in this direction or not. Yes, of course, the government of Pakistan, almost 5 6 years back, when you see there was a extremism, wave of extremism, and it was high in Pakistan, and the wave of terrorism was high in Pakistan. So a book titled Paigam-e Pakistan, I mean, the message from the people of Pakistan. This book was initiated by the government of Pakistan, and the president of Pakistan at that time, Mamnoon Hussain Saab, he just inaugurated this book in his presidency. So this is one of the very important and significant document that has worked in order to bring modernity in the country and bringing a relationship of intersect and intersect relationship based on love and mercy, and the culture of dialogue was created through this book. So the content of this book, Paigam-e Pakistan, even it was signed by almost 5,000 religious scholars, including Sheikh al-Azhar. You see, Sheikh al-Azhar, he has great respect in all the Muslim countries. Even he has signed this book. You see, the content of the book was mainly based how we can extend respect for each other, and no individual or the group of the people is authorized to announce the call of jihad against anyone. It is just all of them, they agreed that the announcement of jihad or lawful war against anyone, it is entirely the right of the state, not of the individuals. So previously, in the last 2 decades, what has been happening in Pakistan, you know, few extremist groups, those who are very much influenced in Pakistan, and they disturb the peace of the land. So what happened as a result of, you see, many organizations, they were sometimes being planted from some other part of the world, sometimes they were being money was spent on them. Ultimately, these nurseries, the people were trained over here in this part of the world, and then they were used for some international agendas. But what happened as a result, you see, the people of Pakistan, the mainstream peaceful citizens of the Pakistan, those who love diversity, they love to live in diversity with unity. Like I would say, Hanji Lim, you see, the Buddhist brothers, they have very good roots in Pakistan, and the people, the annual pilgrims, they come to Pakistan in Taxila and many other places, they feel quite safe and secure. So the image of Pakistan, unfortunately, when it was understood through global media, because of the handful of extremist people, those who hijacked some of the very beautiful terminologies, like Qamar Sahib identified, like the concept, real concept of jihad, like the concept of abode of war and abode of peace, and then the concept of virgins and shahada and martyrdom, and the concept of global caliphate. So these terminologies were basically hijacked by those extremist people, which has nothing to do with the mainstream interpretations of Islam. Majority of the people, they are all peace-loving people, and definitely we, being the country based on diversity, everyone around the world can visit Pakistan and they feel as if, you see, nothing is, you see, going on what is going to be presented on the global media. This was my just humble understanding that I just wanted to present on this very prestigious forum. Thank you.
Thank you
Sami
for
sir.
the elaboration, Tarek. I think it's very important what you have said. Unfortunately, a handful of people can sabotage the image of nation or a country. I invite Kamar if you'd like to respond or elaborate more, if you want.
Yes, this, Dr. Tariq Saab, I'm very thankful to you that you have endorses many of my parts of my presentation, and I'm more learned about that. You told me about those. I'm more learned about that, and I'm curious to explore this book more about, maybe in full English translation. I'm looking for its English because it is in progress. It's in translation into English is in progress, and I used Quran translation.com for translation from the Urdu to English. These verses. So I will work more for this because this is a very beautifully written. Because of time shortage, I missed the hadiths. There were very beautiful hadiths that were connected with the verses of these Quran. So if they are linked with the Quranic verses and the context of these verses, Quranic verses, and when they were revealed and what was the context, and that is giving me more motivation, more curiosity to work about this one and to contribute to peace education, Islam and peace education. Thank you so much. Thank you. Jazakallah.
There's another question to you, Kamar. Is this book officially endorsed, officially approved, or is it just being developed and authored and being used in such a large number of schools? Is it the government? I mean, what's the position of the government or official or the Ministry of Education, if you have that?
I may not be clear about this one because I think Mr. Tariq can tell more in detail about this. I perceive that Ministry of Religious and the scholars who have endorsed this book from all leaders and scholars from all sects, they are very overlapped. Mostly, maybe they will be working in as a Ministry of Religion. They will be like very Deobandi scholar Fazlur Rahman. He is a political leader. He has held many in Ministry of Religious and other foreign affairs positions, and he was at the time of his inauguration ceremony of this book.
Mm-hmm.
So it means it has some link with the official status, not formally. I'm not aware formally it has something.
Tariq, please, thank you for willingness to add to this question.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course, since I think Kamar Saab, he is still in Australia, he might not be having updated knowledge about the status of this book. We have in Pakistan an official constitutional body named as Council of Islamic Ideology. Council of Islamic Ideology, which is the state institution. And this is the council, this is the body which has the legal right to interpret Islam or the teachings of Islam or few other jurisprudential issues. So this is the authorized and legal body of the state of Pakistan. So the book, which is written by PEF, Pakistan Education Foundation, it was even presented on that forum, and the chairman of the council, he also not only appreciated this effort, but also endorsed. And even as far as I remember, that they also conducted a session on this book in the council hall over there, where people, scholars belonging to different sects, they participated and they have endorsed in that meeting as well. So this is what I have. There's a little knowledge about, you see the status, how the book is being appreciated even in the government circles as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that the issue that Professor Mualla was raised about the problems of Syrian refugees into Turkey, immigrant refugees, I think there's also one comment or one issue to be raised, and I will invite the speakers or invite everybody who is listening or participating in the session to respond. And the issue, would the problem of Syrian refugees is unique, or as it's mentioned in the chat box, also Turks, living in Austria and living in Germany also face a similar problem, or maybe the same problem, and now to expand on what Mualla was saying, would this challenges, problems, or programs facing Syrian refugees, is it the same that refugees facing coming to Greeks or Turks or etc. So I would love to invite everybody, of course the panel, and everybody who would like to share some of these experiences. And we start with Mualla if she wants to respond to this question.
Yes, there is some problem with the refugees and other one, but the biggest problem with the Syrian refugees. For example, someone searched this subject and they compare Syrian refugee children and Iranian refugee children. And then teachers said, Iranian children, not problem, because they focus on lesson, they obey the rules. They have not problem with the teachers and other one. And Iranian children seriously good at the mathematics and other one. One Iranian children start to reading Turkish poem, and then he learned Turkish language very well. And because of this, they compare. Yes, these Iranian children so smart and so focused lesson, and they are very good at this lesson. Another one. And researcher asked, what is the parents' job, Iranian children? Doctors, both mother and father. And other one, the Syrian children, father, lost in Syria, and mother, only one single woman. They have low life quality. They have bad experience. But people cannot understand what live in Syria, what is the bad experience about the war. Of course, their culture, their attitude, problem for Turkish teachers. And I can say that there is some prejudice against Iranian or Afghanian or another one. And seriously, biggest one for Syrian children, not others.
Thank you. Anybody would like to respond to this if they have experiences? And from the audience, there's a question.
This is the same situation in Germany. Do you know, in Austria, same. Do you know, we have the really at the public school best refugees coming from Iran, but Syrian are better than Afghanistan. You know, we have in our Syrian Germany problem with refugees from Afghanistan. I think it is not really, it is Mualla has right. It is a problem of from which country, from which part of the country the people coming to Germany or to Austria. It is big issues for the German and Austrian school as well. And I think the refugees from Syria in Germany, they are economical in better situation than in Germany. In Turkey, do you know, if somebody has more money, they don't want to stay in Turkey, they are coming to Germany. They have more possibility. They have their situation, economical situation is much better than other refugees from Afghanistan or from Africa. I think it is really, if I'm hearing to Mualla, I have the feeling that German people talking about the Turks in Germany, it is really same situation, same prejudice about the Turks in Germany and Austria. It is, I think it is the situation of refugees in all of the world is same, you know. Thank you.
There's a question, I don't know if Kamar or even Tariq would answer that. What's the percentage of extremist and radical Muslim and how powerful they are? Or the groups who use Quran verses in a hostile way or despising the other religion believers. So that's something. Also, the questions maybe go to Lim, where where's the religious education in public school? Is there religious education in public school in South Korea? So I will invite Kamal and maybe Tariq to respond if they would like, then to Lim, please. The percentage of
This is very generic question. We can never say that the exact percentage or exact number of extremists or radicals are existing in anywhere in any society. The extremists and the radicals can exist anywhere. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has more than 60%, about 65% Barelvi sect, Sufi Barelvi sect. So relatively Barelvi or Sufi sect, they are relatively peaceful. And then 15 to 20% Deobandi, 10 to 15% almost Deobandi sect, 5 to 10% Salfi, and 15 to 20% Shia sect. So when we come to the radicals or extremists, all sects, almost all sects, they have extremists and they have radicals, they have they may have armed groups. So we cannot say that that is a particular group is extremist, particular group is so very little we can say from every sect that we call as extremist, and they do not use the Quran, because the Quranic interpretation the Quranic interpretation is very elaborative, very philosophical, very not symbolic. They mostly use the symbolic Quranic interpretation, and they use for political and economic purposes. So there is not a religious point of view. So the politics, identity politics, and economics, this makes the conflict. And there are very few people who are become the extremists or radicals, and they are from almost all sects. So that is difficult to say exact percentage about those. Yes, no, Dr. Tariq.
Thank you very much. Yes, in context of Pakistan, we can divide these people into three groups, basically. Those who have already been brainwashed and they are radicalized. And second, the people, the youngsters, the youth who are vulnerable to become radicals and extremists. And the third category is the biggest, as Qamar Saab indicated, that the big number of people, majority of the Muslim youth in Pakistan, they are peace-loving and they are mainstream Muslims who don't have any concern with such radical conceptions. As far as the first group is concerned, those who have already been brainwashed, so the government and individual people, the organizations, they have taken number of measures in order to eradicate them from the society, and they have been quite successful in doing so. Secondly, as you see, the book was very significant that Qamar Saab, he was just introducing. This book has also worked a lot in order to, you see, bring different communities together and to bring them closer to each other in such a way that they are now in a position to understand each other's point of view. And along with that, there are a number of conferences, seminars, and workshops that have been held in Pakistan extensively. And one of them, I was one of the focal person in such an international conference that we organized at our university, where in one of the sessions, even we invited Chief of the Army Staff, General Qamar Javed Bajwa Sahab, who is the current sitting COS, and along with him, you see the Air Chief of Pakistan, And one of the very important session in that conference was that we invited the vice chancellors of various universities of Pakistan. And along with that, you see the people, the religious scholars, the mainstream religious scholars and their heads. And we just got them, given them a chance to sit together and to talk to each other in order to remove those conflicts which are almost existing against each other. So in this way, you see, because of these very concerted efforts, now the percentage of these radicals, it is by the grace of Allah Almighty, it is reducing day by day, day by day, and the culture of love and compassion and mercy and the culture of dialogue. And similarly, you see on that platform, which is known as the Paigam-e Pakistan, basically this initiative was started by International Islamic University initially. So they have also launched almost hundreds and thousands of such interfaith and intrafaith seminars. So the people definitely, they went to schools, they went to universities, they went to engage common people of the society. So as a whole, you see atmosphere within these 5 to 10 years, it has almost changed the number of the people, those who have been earlier on the very limelight in media, whatever they used to say, of course, they were highly projected. But because of the 20 points national action plan by the government of Pakistan and many other measures, so it has almost moved back to its normal position. Now we can hardly find such people, those who have radical understandings of Islam or the literal or extremist interpretation of Islam. Like you see sometimes these people who used to parrot some verses and the traditions of Holy Prophet ﷺ, and in order to brainwash the youth of the people, they were highly accessible for them. And this is how you see they have been used for such terroristic activities. But thanks to the government, thanks to the global community, those who have been quite cooperative in order to handle this menace of terrorism. So now we can feel as if you see what is going on, the misperception about Pakistan and the globe as if this is the country of terror, the country not safe for the people. So it is almost away. Now it's quite safe, and it is because of the whole global and local efforts that have been doing in this context.
Thank you, Tariq. I would like to invite Lim to briefly answer the question, where's the status of religious education in public school in South Korea?
So unfortunately, no, there's no religious education in public schools in South Korea, but private schools, on the other hand, they do religious education, and the majority of them are Catholic schools. And it's really hard to find other religious groups, but because right after the outbreak of Korean War, lots of missionary groups came and built Catholic schools. So those are private schools. They do religious education, but in public education system, there's no religious education or curriculum involved.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we got to stop somehow very shortly. Before we stop, I think there's a question by Fareed. Maybe, I don't know if this needs a longer answer or just short answer, Fareed.
Well, it can be short. It's just a comment, and if I may, to all speakers. I think the roots of it, one fundamental problem is that everything in the world, if it's a text, it has to be contextualized. And Islam as a religion is a text that was contextualized then in the when it came 1,400 years ago. And that's why we have in the Quran, when it describes paradise, it describes it in a way of shade and women of a white complexion. These are the things that would have been attractive then to the locals there. There is contextualization of the text. No text would be really meaningful without a context. The problem is that we want to take the specific text that came with particular relevance to time and place there, like certain laws and rules, and want to decontextualize them, give the eternity of time and absolute pervasiveness of space and geography, expanse of geography to it, and say it's relevant, applicable the same way, the same severity and all else, all of the time, all of the place. I think this is not secularizing Islam. This is not taking the holiness out of Islam. It's just understanding religion as a phenomenon, historical phenomenon. Like everything else in life, it has a context.
Yes.
And therefore, decontextualizing it can be problematic. Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you very, very much. I just want to make a last comment. I think radicalization exists in all religion, all ethnic group. It's not only exclusively or inclusively used in certain type of ethnic background or religious or groups, that's for sure. The other thing, I think the media, how it's been dealt with the issue of refugees and how political interests of governments, like the issue of Turkey, some people think they have interest in controlling part of Syria, etc. So it's a whole discussion that leads. I would like to end with thank all the speakers very much. Appreciate their comments, their devotion, and their interest in expanding the concept of peace education, using religious, and also dealing with the issue of refugees or these defectors all over the world. I appreciate the organizers and the patience of all participants, and I wish you a very enjoyable afternoon. Thank you very much.
Some information about next session, 3:30 here in Zoom. Please don't forget to come to next session here. Thank you so much.